All right, so we're going to be going over the section that you read about amphibians, and keep in mind that in the next few days we're going to be kind of comparing amphibians with reptiles when we read about them. So I want you to really be thinking about the characteristics that we put into each group and how they're similar and different, because a lot of people get them mixed up. They're grouped together a lot of times, and they're actually very different. So some general characteristics of amphibians is we say they live a double life. What does that mean? Well, they live in water and on land. They typically have their larvae in water, and then they go to land. Now, there are some exceptions you will see as we go through, but generally speaking, we can say that about amphibians. So, for example, think about a tadpole, which becomes an adult frog. The tadpole is typically in the water, and the frog tends to be on land near water. But there are some aquatic frogs we know, so like I said, there's exceptions to the rule. But you can generally say that they live on land later in life. So they do have lungs eventually, and sometimes the gills turn into lungs, but typically the adult has lungs. So we know that they are very familiar to us because we have lungs, and we haven't really seen lungs yet. So this is kind of an important advancement that we're thinking about here as we get closer to the human body. So obviously it's a sac-like organ that takes oxygen from the air and delivers it to our blood, because all of our organs need to have oxygen. And the adult amphibians have legs typically. So some examples, and if we made a concept map, we would include frogs and toads, salamanders, and caecilians. And so a lot of times people kind of group frogs and toads together and salamanders and caecilians. And within these groups, of course, we have many, many different species of these different groups. So other characteristics, they have thin, moist skin, and they breathe through their skin. So it's really important that they stay near water to keep their skin moist so that it allows them to actually breathe through their skin. And so they will go back to water and continue to stay humid and moist. And they live in water as the embryo, like I said, and move to land as an adult. So here are a couple of different salamanders that you may have heard of. I believe it was someone, I can't remember which class, but they really wanted to study the axolotl, which is on the right. It's such a cute little cartoony salamander. And it actually keeps its gills. It doesn't leave the water. So there we already have an exception to the rule. And the marbled salamander, this allows, they live in damp places, so it allows them to be able to, again, keep their skin moist. So they might live under rocks or under leaves to kind of keep themselves moist. So think of that thin, smooth skin when you think of amphibians. It's not smooth, it's not kind of rough and dry like you would see later on, maybe with a reptile. So that's going to be key. And then when we talk about frogs and toads, a lot of times people have some trouble kind of distinguishing between them. And they are very similar. What you'll notice, again, thinking about their skin in this case, they both stay close to water and they do keep their skin a little bit moist. But a toad's skin is going to look a little drier and bumpier, even though it is, in fact, an amphibian and it does have, you know, pretty moist skin. It is a little rougher. Now, if you also notice, maybe even their eyes are a little bit different. So that's a harder to distinguish piece that your book doesn't mention a lot. But their eye location, the toads are a little bit wider and the frogs are closer together, and it's hard to tell from this picture. But I don't think that's necessarily an easy way to tell the difference between them, but it's another way that you can tell the difference. So key points, make sure as we look through these examples that you're familiar with them and the characteristics as we move on to talking about reptiles soon.